Welcome to Entre Nosotras, Latina Voices. Today, I'm honored to have one of the candidates running for House District 76, Ms. Elisa Tamayo. And this is the second part of our show where we're talking more about the legislature. Ms. Tamayo, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Dr. Peregrino. Thanks again for having me.
And so last time you told us a little bit about your professional experience. Could you talk a little bit about your educational background for our viewers?
Yeah, absolutely. So I got my start here at EPCC. I got my GED in 2010, so about 10 years ago. I was a high school dropout because I went to school across the border and I did not finish high school. And so I was able to finish here at EPCC, got my GED, and then I went on to get my bachelor's degree of business administration at UTEP with a concentration in economics. And I graduated UTEP in 2014. I did some political science classes as well. I was always very interested in public service. And during my time as a UTEP student, I did a fellowship in DC, the Bill Archer Fellowship, where I was able to intern at the White House and then take classes with the UT system for 6 months.
Could you talk a little bit about that? Was that under the Obama administration? Or?
Yeah, it was under the Obama administration. This was in the fall of 2012. So it was also an interesting semester to be in DC because he was running for re-election for his second term. So it was an exciting time to be over there, and I never thought I was gonna be able to work at the White House. That was like a dream come true for me. But it was a very rewarding and fulfilling experience, walking every day in the White House, seeing, I only saw the president a couple times, but it was really exciting when I did. And seeing, the Secretary of State at the time was Hillary Clinton, and we saw her a couple of times at the cafeteria. So it was a very rewarding and fulfilling experience that I think also prepped me now in what I'm doing.
Wow, that's wonderful. And so you just applied for that particular internship, or was that someone that came to recruit you?
So when I applied for the Bill Archer Fellowship, they don't tell you what semester you're going to be serving in. So when they told me you're going to go in the fall semester, I had missed the application for the White House. And that was my dream. My dream was to be a White House intern. And I was really sad. And so I started applying to other things. And 1 month before I left to DC, I was on Twitter. So this is where social media plays a big role in opportunities, I think. And I saw that the White House tweeted that they still needed a couple interns for the Council on Environmental Quality. And this was after the deadline. So I said, oh, maybe this is my opportunity. So I tweeted back at them and I said, I'm really interested and here's my resume. And so I did all of that. And then they called me in last minute and they said, okay, we have a spot for you. And this was all because of what I saw on social media, on Twitter. And so that's how I got my opportunity. And it was such a great experience, and I'm excited I was able to do it because I thought I had missed it and I was not going to be able to. So.
Wow, I have to encourage my students to get on Twitter.
It does get a lot of the conversation started. I mean, it's no coincidence that the president is always tweeting, but it gets a lot of conversations started and policy issues. And it's funny how we're transitioning, into a lot of the social media, like they're playing a more critical role in elections, in the policy-making process. So yeah, definitely, I encourage students to get on Twitter and start following the policy that they're interested in or the issues that matter to them.
And so could you speak a little bit about that? Like, what did you do on environmental policy as part of being an intern?
Yes, absolutely. So this was during a time where there were some solar companies coming into the U.S. So I did a lot of research on solar energy, renewable energy sources. It was a very different administration, I must say, because I know, and it's really sad for me to see that they're cutting out a lot of the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency budget, and tying their hands because we had made so much progress through, and I say we, but the Obama administration did so much progress in renewable energy sources and trying to bring in, more solar energy into our communities. And sadly, we have seen all of that kind of regress with this current administration. But I'm hopeful that in the Texas legislature, we're able to address some of these environmental concerns and do more for our environment because we have to do something. I agree with Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez that we need a Green New Deal for people to know that there's hope and that we need to take care of our planet and we need to take stronger positions on recycling and renewable energy and a lot of things to save our planet.
And so is that another policy issue that you would push at the state level? We're the Sun
Yes.
City, right? So it would make sense
Absolutely.
to have a lot of solar energy here.
I agree. We should be leading the way in solar energy, and we haven't. Sadly, El Paso Electric was not very encouraging of solar panels. They still charged, the franchise fee and things that I wish I could address in the Texas legislature. But other things as well, not just solar energy, but I believe that we need to ban styrofoam from state parks. Right now, we love, we enjoy going in the state parks. I personally enjoy a lot hiking in the Franklin Mountains, the Big Bend area, and I know that there's a lot of Texans that enjoy getting out there, but sadly, when we bring in a lot of styrofoam with us, it takes forever to decompose. So that's a big priority for me, is making sure that we ban styrofoam from state parks. That we push for less plastic bags in our communities. So yeah, those are issues that I would be very happy to look into and see what we can do in addressing the environment.
And some states, I know I visited California recently,
You did.
they charge you a surcharge for plastic bags, and so maybe that could be something Texas could look into.
Right. So there were city ordinances that were trying to do that. I know the city of Austin had also the plastic bag ordinance. Sadly, the legislature tried, and I think they were successful in reversing those city ordinances or overriding the city ordinances, because again, we are a Republican-controlled legislature, and the environment is not on their priorities. So we need to change that. And if we flip the House, or if we come closer to getting more Democrats into the Texas House, I think we could do something and say, yeah, let's let cities have their own ordinances on plastic bags, or impose our own state ordinances or state laws to make sure that we're watching out for plastic. Single-use plastic is something that we must get rid of.
Great, great. And usually Republicans favor local control, but I guess if it's something that they don't
Cuando
like.
les conviene.
Yes.
That's what I would say, is only when it's convenient for them, and that's something that the senator brought up this session, is for all the lip service that they give to local control, the fact that they're reversing city ordinances on important things like single-use plastic or paid sick leave, things that workers rely on, minimum wage or things like that. We should be leading the fight on those things and letting cities do their own thing.
And so, you've had the opportunity to be in the legislature as a staffer. Could you talk a little bit about what that's like? Because many of our students don't have that opportunity, but you have as a staffer and as a young professional. Could you talk about that?
Yes. Sadly, El Paso is so geographically far from Austin that it's really hard for students to get that legislative experience, to go to Austin and do an internship at the Capitol. I was able to do it through Senator Rodriguez's office. I asked, I told him I was a director of constituent services here in El Paso at the time, but I said, I really want to go to Austin and have that legislative experience because it's so eye-opening. The Texas legislature is very fast-paced, and they only meet every other year. So, it's 140 days every other year, very long days and nights and weekends that we had to work. But it's eye-opening because you see everything, all the action, the policies that impact our communities and day-to-day lives. Everyday El Pasoans are affected by the things that are being discussed in Austin. So I wish that we could do more to have students from El Paso get that legislative experience in the Capitol. So I have thought about doing something like the Bill Archer Fellowship, which was what I did in DC, but having something maybe in the Austin Capitol. So a fellowship that we could try to recruit students from UTEP and EPCC to come for the legislative session and get class credit for. I think that would be a fantastic experience for them to get to see firsthand the process and how things get done. It's so interesting because, like I said, all these bills and policies, they moved so quickly. And then you get, as a staffer, you get to, get this very hands-on experience file amendments, draft talking points, see the product of your research go onto the House or the Senate floors, and how it moves so quickly, and have these discussions between Democrats and Republicans, and it's very exciting. And I hope that through my office, hopefully if I get elected, we can give that opportunity to more El Paso students to come to Austin for a legislative session and get that firsthand exposure.
That would be great,
huh?
right?
Yeah.
No, and I think there is the Irma Rangel program through the Mexican American Legislative Caucus,
Okay,
where students can try to get an internship opportunity. And so since you've been there at the Capitol as a staffer, if elected, have you thought about what committees you'd want to try to get on?
Yes, that's a great question, because there's so many committees, and I know that as a freshman, it's very hard for me it's going to be really hard for me to get my pick, or my first choice. But I mean, regardless, I still would love to try to get into the Public Health Committee. I know, like I said it in the first segment with you, is that healthcare is a big priority for me, and it has to be a priority next session. We cannot go any more years without El Pasoans having access to healthcare. Quality, affordable healthcare. So if I could serve in the Public Health Committee, I would be honored, and I would make sure that I use that opportunity to make everything we can, not just to expand Medicaid, but maybe lower the cost of prescription drugs. I saw that recently a couple states put a limit on the amount of, or the cost of insulin. So, capping the cost of, very vital medicine like insulin is something that we could do at the state level. I mean, if there's other states that are doing that, Texas could also do that, especially because we have really high rates of diabetes in our communities. So we need to make sure that we do something that the people need and people can benefit from. So I would be interested in serving the Public Health Committee. I know transportation would be amazing as well. We had from El Paso, we had the Chairman Pickett, who led that committee and did great and wonderful things, not just for El Paso, but for the entire state. And transportation needs are always going to be there, right? We're growing, and with that growth, we have transportation challenges that could be addressed in that committee. So having a voice from El Paso in that committee would be great. Appropriations, it's also a great one. I know that as a freshman would be almost impossible for me to get into appropriations, but making sure that El Paso gets its fair share. And Dr. Mary Gonzalez has done a great job in the Appropriations Committee and making sure that El Paso gets what we need, even for our tramway, because last session we were able to get that funding because of Mary's leadership and Joe Moody and Senator Rodriguez and Blanco. Like, they all fought so hard for us to get funding for the Wilder tramway for El Paso, to get that back up and running. And so it's important to have a voice, because if you're not sitting at the table, you don't get the funding that you need.
And I know you mentioned in our last show that you're a hiker, and so I know that our delegation was also able to get the visitor center for the Franklin Mountains Park.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That was great. I think that Speaker Joe Moody deserves all the credit for that, and it's exciting because we do have the largest state park in an urban area. So the Franklin Mountains needed that visitor center, and it's exciting that it's finally coming to fruition. And we're going to enjoy that, and not just myself. I know there's many hikers probably in your audience as well. So it's exciting that we're going to be able to have that.
And so, like, let's say if you could wave a magic wand, what would be something that you really think needs more funding here in El Paso, or in House District 76?
District 76. If I could wave a magic wand, I would give health insurance for everyone. I would, healthcare for all would be amazing. I think everyone deserves to have access to quality, affordable healthcare. And I know this from, it hits home for me because my mom is currently fighting stage 4 cancer. She had breast cancer a couple years ago and metastasized to her bones, her spine, and her hip. So she has bone cancer now. And luckily, she had health insurance in Mexico, though. So she has to go every month to get her chemo treatments in Mexico, where she bought her private health insurance like 25 years ago or something. And luckily, they cover her medicine, the chemo treatments, the surgeries that she's had, biopsies. All those things are covered, not here. So we do have to travel for her to get that attention, medical attention. So I think, and she's not the only one. I know that it hits home for me, but there's so many El Pasoans that are sadly going through the same chronic illness that is so devastating. And as it is with health insurance, has been so difficult to navigate. I can't even imagine without having access to healthcare. So if I could wave a magic wand, I would say access to healthcare for everyone.
Okay. And I'd also, since we're having a conversation, I'm a breast cancer survivor, so I can,
Wow.
6 years, and
That's great.
and I'm thankful that that I had medical insurance through the college, and I still worked and did classes and just wore a little hat when I lost my hair to chemo, because I didn't want to lose my health care, and so I can definitely empathize with that. But speaking of that, one of the things that I bring up in class is they're fighting to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. And so could you talk about some of those consequences, or what do you think about that policy at the national level? Do you think that would impact us here at the state level?
Yeah, it definitely trickles down to all states. So we need to fight for that. And that is why elections matter. And that is why I tell people, you cannot afford to not vote, because not voting is voting. And sadly, the attacks that we see from the president and that, like you said, at the national level, they're trying to get rid of healthcare. Instead of trying to make strides to get more people covered and better access to healthcare, lower prescription drugs, and things that people need, they're just lashing out like all these things that the community needs. So elections matter, and that is when I talk about why people need to vote. Like I said, it's not voting is voting. If you are a citizen, you have to vote, and do it for the people that can't vote. Remember your loved ones. Remember your neighbors that might not be citizens yet. Maybe they're legal permanent residents and they're paying their fair share of taxes and everything. Vote for them. Vote for the people that can't vote, because we need good people in government. We need people that are going to care for these very first basic needs that we need. So I always, when we talk about healthcare, we always end up talking about voting, because all these attacks and the president trying to get rid of the Affordable Care Act and progress that we had made towards getting more people covered are just going away. And so elections matter. Elections have consequences, and we have to make sure that we go out and vote.
And so actually, I was going to ask a question about voting. Our Attorney General, in case people don't know, is one of the states that is suing to get rid of the Affordable Care Act now that the tax penalty is gone. And so you kind of answered this question, but sometimes I've noticed that my students don't care about voting. What advice? Why should they care? What would you tell them?
Voting. Because all of these decisions, they're going to impact either themselves, your students, or their loved ones. So think about your loved ones when you're putting off voting, maybe during early voting. It's like, oh, pues no tuve tiempo, or I didn't have time, or lo que sea. No, think about your loved ones. Think about the things that, and sometimes it's lack of information. Maybe we're not doing, maybe elected officials and we as a society are not doing enough to talk about these things, to talk about the services and the things that the government should or should not provide. So to me, it is like, it's great that we're having these spaces where we have these conversations and we can start talking about important and critical issues. But yeah, now that that the elections are coming up, make sure that you make time to go and vote. And like I said, do it. If you're not doing it for you because you're healthy and you don't feel the impact of some of these policies directly, do it for your loved ones. Do it for the people that you care about. And that's another big issue that I've been seeing recently as I've been block walking and talking to voters at their doors, is that sadly, a lot of people are being taxed out of their homes. They're selling their homes because of the very high property taxes that we have in our city. And it's very heartbreaking to see elderly people that should be enjoying a comfortable retirement having to sell their homes because they cannot afford the property taxes anymore, or making tough choices between healthcare and taxes, skipping doctor's appointments or not being able to buy medication because they cannot afford, they cannot make ends meet anymore. And so we need to do something about taxes, and they shouldn't have to put a reverse mortgage on something that they worked so hard to pay for their entire lives. And that is the only or the best way of like generational wealth transfer is a home, right? Like that is, so we shouldn't be forcing seniors to make those tough choices between like selling their home, putting a reverse mortgage. You know, we shouldn't. We're failing El Pasoans if we're not addressing those things.
And I think at the state level is where you can make some of those changes. Often my students are surprised that state legislators make only $7,200 a year, and I believe when the legislative session is in session, you get a small per diem. You know, what do you think the low salaries keep people from running for public office?
Absolutely. I think it's very unfortunate that we as legislators don't make a living wage, because you keep a lot of good, talented people and people that are reflective of the community to run for office. And that is why we see a lot of the same people in power, you know, people that can afford to be legislators because they have other sources of income, like, you know, and the flexibility to go and serve. So we often see a lot of older, retired white males, you know, wealthier or richer, and that's not reflective of the population that they're representing. So sadly, I think that the low salary inhibits a lot of good qualified people to run for office, and this race is a perfect example. We have an open seat, and we should have at least 6 or 7 people running for the seat. And if we don't have them, it's because people are not encouraged to do it. Who's going to be able to take half a year off every other year to go to Austin and serve in the legislature for $600 a month? You can barely afford a mortgage if you can, for a single person maybe, on $600 per month. You definitely need other sources of income to make ends meet and also serve in the legislature. So it's unfortunate that that's the case, but at the same time, the flip side of that, I would say, is that you get people who really want to serve. So if you're doing this for $7,200 a year or $600 a month, you're not doing it for the money. You're doing it because you believe that you can make a difference. You're doing it because you believe in the community, and I think that is why I'm doing this, because I believe that we need good representation. I know what's at stake, and I know what the policies that impact our communities. You know, we need a good voice. We need someone who cares for this community. So that is the flip side, I think.
And I know a lot of the legislators are attorneys, and so they can they have that supplementary income. What will you do when you're not in session?
True. There's a lot of attorneys and doctors who, because they have their own practice, they can afford to take the time off, and also they make enough in their profession so that they don't have to rely on this very small salary. And I'm not a doctor and I'm not an attorney, so that is a great question. But my dad, like I mentioned, he's a small business owner, and I'm working in that family business. It's a trucking company, and he agreed to give me the time off to go and serve every other year for 140 days in the Texas legislature, and still make a living wage through the small business. And I know that I'm really blessed and lucky, because there's probably more qualified people out there that could do a great job in District 76, but they can't because they don't have that flexibility through their jobs or something that allows them to serve. And so I don't want to take that lightly. I want to take that responsibility very seriously, and tell people, you know, I'm doing this because I believe that El Paso has so much potential and so much to offer, and I want to be a good voice for this community.
Well, and you know, I know that the elections are coming, so we wish you the best of luck. Is there anything that maybe we haven't covered that you would like to discuss?
I think we covered a lot, and I'm very grateful and appreciative of your time and of you doing, like I said, like having these spaces to have healthy, open discussions about things that matter so much for our community and what's at stake. So I just want to thank you and ask people and your viewers to please remember to vote. early voting, like don't put it off, because like if you wait until election day, you never know what might happen that day or what might come in the way. So don't put off voting. Do it for your loved ones. Do it for yourself, for the things that are going to be directly impacting your life and your loved ones. So remember to vote. If you have questions, we have very active Facebook and Instagram pages. So go and like us, follow us, Facebook message us, and I'm just thankful. So.
And so what advice would you give to somebody, to a young person that's maybe thinking about running for public office? What have you learned in these past few months?
I think my strongest piece of advice to someone thinking about this is just do it. I was not prepared. I would say I never thought I was going to run for office myself. So that is the advice that I had to give myself, is like, just do it, because you believe in this community, because you know what is at stake for El Pasoans. You know the challenges that this community has seen in the last few years and how we can address them, because I have the experience of having served in the legislature in other offices and seeing it firsthand. But we need diversity. We need diversity in the Texas legislature. And so I would say to a young person thinking about doing it, talk to your mentors, talk to yourself and your parents and your loved ones, but do it. If this is in your heart, do it. And if I can be of service, if you have any questions and I can answer them, feel free to reach out to me. I'm very good about answering to the Facebook messages myself, or about texting or calling me. I mean, I'm open to helping, hopefully, young people follow in our footsteps and run for office.
And I'll attest to that, because I reached out to your campaign via Facebook, and I got a positive response. So I want to, again, thank you for being here, sharing some of your knowledge and experience. Remember, early voting is coming up February 18th to the 28th. You can go to epcountyvotes.com to find out where your nearest early voting location is. And like Ms. Tamayo mentioned, don't wait till Election Day. Although if you do, Election Day is March 3rd. And this is an important election. Whoever wins this primary is going to be the representative in the fall. In November, because there's no Republican running. And so this is it. This is the big race. And so thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to meet with us. And we wish you the best of luck. We're also working on getting the other candidate to come in to have equal time for both candidates, so that you can get to know them a little better than those 1-minute responses that they do at some of the debates. So thank you for being here.
Thank you.
We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you.